Hello, I'm Hank Haven. In July 1965, I went to pilot training at Vance Air Force Base, Oklahoma. After graduation, the Air Force sent me to survival school, radar school, and then on to a replacement training unit, the 431st TAC Fighter Squadron at George Air Force Base, California. I trained as a co-pilot in the F-4C Phantom II fighter. Like a lot of pilots before us, our initial air combat tactics training in the F-4C was a 2-week, 10-sortie flight course designed only to give the basics before going to Southeast Asia. The co-pilots and navigators only flew on 6 of those training sorties. In July 1967, I was sent to the 558 TAC Fighter Squadron, Cam Ranh Bay Air Base, South Vietnam. I flew 152 combat missions, with 30 of those up north in Route Pac 1 next to the DMZ. In the last week of January 1968, North Korea captured the USS Pueblo. My squadron was sent to Korea on February 4th to provide combat support to the South Koreans. I finished my 1-year combat tour of duty in Southeast Asia in July 1968. When I returned to the United States from Vietnam, I was assigned to the 49th TAC Fighter Wing, Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico. It was being reformed after a long tour of duty at Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany. I signed on board August 1st, 1968, and met a Major Tom Stolley from the 9th TAC Fighter Squadron. He was the only other officer there at the time. He was keeping things running administratively while everyone else was en route. He handed me a list of the Vietnam pilots that were coming to Holloman to reform the wing, asking me if I knew any of the Vietnam returnees. We proceeded to divide up the incoming personnel to their separate squadrons. There was a settling in process of a couple of months while everyone was figuring out where they were and what they were supposed to be doing. In mid-October, Mike Ryan called his older brother Jack and asked for a meeting. Jack and Mike were both sons of General John D. Ryan, who later became Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Jack, my aircraft commander, asked me to join in. Mike had also brought his backseater with him into the discussion. Currently, he was a navigator who had transferred from Europe with the 49th. Mike started the discussion with concern about how many aircrew members were being killed in Vietnam. We discussed the current kill ratios of 3-to-1 over North Vietnam as compared to 10-to-1 in World War II in Korea. It was bad. The new guys were being shot down before they had enough experience to know what to do. The basics were not enough. We were losing air crews at an enormous rate over North Vietnam. The consensus among the 4 of us was that something needed to be done. There was a short moment of silence while we gathered our thoughts. Training, Jack and I both said, standing at the same time, realizing how simple the solution really was. Jack started talking about a training program to help pilots recognize the hazards of flying over North Vietnam and how it would improve their survivability. Jack knew that the wing squadron weapons officers were in the building at the time and sent me out to get them. It took me just a moment to get Joe Dryden and Pete Schmidt to join our conversation. They were in the navigation room planning a practice low-level mission. Jack explained the situation to Joe and Pete and about the training idea. Then he pointed to each of us and asked, "Do you agree that there should be an improved air combat tactics training program locally for the guys who hadn't been to Vietnam?" Each of us agreed, and the air crews had to be continually trained, and that the air combat tactics program that we received in RTU needed to be rewritten and updated. The tactics had changed considerably since World War II in Korea. The weapons officers, Joe Dryden and Pete Schmidt, were appointed to write the training syllabus for the air-to-air combat training programs. Our group of captains consisted of 4 aircraft commanders and 2 backseaters. 3 had been to Southeast Asia, and 3 had come from Europe. We all knew the war was going to last a while longer, and the kill ratios were terrible. The veterans wanted to pass along our experiences to others who might go to Vietnam. When the 20-minute meeting was over, a sixth sense of insight told me that something very important had just happened. It would have a huge impact on pilots from this point onward. Joe and Pete wrote the syllabus for 29 training sorties, submitted the program for approval. The wing commander approved the syllabus within 2 weeks. We started training in November. Meanwhile, the Navy had already decided to start a program to train their pilots in the fine art of air combat tactics. They called it Top Gun. They were looking around for a program that had already been developed when they ran across ours. They asked if they could fly with us for a week to see if our program would meet their requirements. The next week, we left for a 2.5 months of temporary duty at Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany. It was the first Crested Cap 1 reforger exercises. The Navy took to the syllabus like a duck takes to water. They added 2 sorties, raising the sortie count to 31, started using it in their Top Gun school. About 45 days later, the Air Force Fighter Weapons School at Nellis Air Force Base heard about the Navy's Top Gun program and asked them where they got it. The Navy told them that they had gotten it from one of the Air Force's own units, the 49th TAC Fighter Wing at Holloman. The Air Force then adopted the program and called it Red Flag, a competition for the best. Because we improved the training system, the kill ratios went from 3-to-1 to over 10-to-1, saving our air crews and their aircraft. I am glad to have had a hand in starting the program that has been running and growing for over 43 years. Now many of our allies send their pilots to our schools and competitions where they learn to fly their planes from minimum controllable airspeeds to the maximum. They can only make for better and safer pilots by pushing the boundaries of their knowledge. Remember, Superman has to wear a cape to have this much fun. The other side of this is, we're not Supermen and bullets don't bounce off. There will be a test after this presentation. Do you remember the field of maneuver curve shown earlier? The dogfight arena is egg-shaped. Fighters will fly over the surface of the egg. The slower you go, the faster you turn. The actual dogfight is much more complex. It involves a series of maneuvers that form the same curve. I call it the energy maneuverability curve. There are many ways to attack your target, and this is only one of them. Some constraints are the abilities of pilots and their physical limitations, your aircraft limitations and capabilities, differences between fighters, and weapon systems limitation. A pilot can experience tremendous forces of gravity or G-forces in a dogfight. I've personally seen the G-meter pegged at 10 Gs. Gs are negatively correlated with time. The higher the G-force, the less time a pilot can spend in those conditions. As a comparison, a 60-degree bank level turn is only 2 Gs. Most aerobatic, over-the-top maneuvers like a loop require 4 Gs to complete. A pilot's G-suit only allows a 2G advantage. A pilot must fly his aircraft at its limits. Anything less and he could lose the fight. The F-4C was limited to 7.5 Gs with fuel in the wing tanks and 8.5 Gs with internal fuel only. The F-4C internal fuel was 12,500 pounds, but full afterburner burned it at 36,000 pounds per hour. That's only about 20 minutes of dogfighting time, and you still have to get home. Any aircraft near a stall or at high angles of attack becomes a rudder-controlled aircraft for best roll rate. Many jet pilots forget this because of the lack of engine and propeller torque. The differences between fighters can make a huge difference on the outcome of the dogfight. Just because your enemy is not supersonic and you are, doesn't mean you will win. He can turn faster and get his weapons pointed at you before you can get set up in a firing solution. Weapons have their limitations too. Missiles are fast and are considered long-range attack systems out of gun range, but are severely G-limited. Radar missiles are used in a frontal or rear attack. Heat-seeking missiles are used primarily in the rear. The Gatling gun is a close-quarter system from any attack angle, but is severely airspeed limited to less than Mach 1.2, or you'll eat your own bullets. The pilot must keep all of these factors and limitations in mind as he sets up his attack. Since you can't feel the G-forces or get the sensations of glancing over your shoulder to see what your enemy is doing, I provided distractions while showing the ACT drawings in the background. Today, this is called multitasking. Pause this movie after the red signboard or wait about another 30 seconds until the end for a longer look at the dogfight diagram. Thank you and enjoy your flight.